I love you, she gasped as she shattered around him. The word surprised them both. He stilled, pulling back to look at her. Say it again. I love you, Victor. My monster, my enemy, my husband. I love you, too, he said as dawn broke again. More than my empire, more than my life, more than my soul. Prove it. His smile was wicked. Every day for the rest of our lives. Any regrets? Victor asked as they stood on the balcony, souls spread before them. Just one. His body tensed. I should have slapped you harder that first time. Maybe we would have figured this out sooner. His laugh was rich, dark, everything she loved about him. You can slap me anytime you want, wife. Careful. I might take you up on that. I'm counting on it. She turned in his arms, the morning sun painting her skin gold. So what now? He lifted her onto the balcony railing, stepping between her thighs. Now I'm going to underscore my wife on this balcony where all of Moscow can see who you belong to here. Anyone could, that's the point. His hands pushed her dress up. Let them see. Let them know that the stubborn woman who never listens, who drives me insane, who nearly gets herself killed daily. Let them know she's mine. You're insane. You'll ruin me. You made me that way, and you wanted me to ruin you. Wanted me to underscore you until you cannot walk again. Give me permission, he commanded, fingers already finding her. Say yes, Zara. She gasped as he worked on her with his tongue and his fingers. As he claimed her there, high above the city he ruled, Zara thought about the strange journey that had brought them here. An arranged marriage between enemies. 3 months of violent foreplay disguised as hatred and a love born from stubbornness and spite. She'd married the devil himself, thinking it was a prison sentence. Instead, she'd found a man who'd burn the world for her, and she'd burn it right back for him. More, she gasped, her nails raking down his back. Be polite, wifey. Victor rasped as he kissed her down to her chest. Beg for it. More, please. Zara gasped and bit her lower lip. You're so greedy, he growled, but gave her what she wanted, underscore, her harder, deeper, until she was screaming his name. They didn't leave the bed for hours. Every position, every surface, every filthy promise he'd made became reality. When dawn broke through the windows, she was covered in bruises and bite marks, her body aching in the most delicious ways. Mine, he murmured, tracing a mark on her neck. Yours, she agreed, then bit his shoulder hard enough to leave her own mark. And you're mine. Always. But always was never calm when you're married to a mafia. It would always be interrupted by gunshots. The attack came 3 days later when she was at a charity gala. He'd begged her not to attend. She'd gone anyway, stubborn to the end, and nearly died for it. Now, as Victor held her in the destroyed ballroom, blood on his hands from the men he'd killed to get to her, she understood the truth. Your cousin wanted to kill me, she asked quietly. Victor nodded, fury swirling on his face. He thinks you make me weak, and every weakness has to be eliminated from the syndicate. Do I make you weak? He cupped her face, thumb brushing over her cheekbone. And I'd choose that weakness over any strength. But what if he comes for us again? The word was final. Deadly. He won't. She understood even without him saying anything. Her husband was the dangerous Mafia Don after all. Does that frighten you? He asked. That I'd kill my own blood for you. She rose on her toes, pressing her forehead to his. It should, but it doesn't. Because I do the same for you. He kissed her then, soft and desperate, tasting like blood and promises. Let's go home. In the car, his hand was possessive on her thigh, his touch reigniting the fire that never really died between them. By the time they reached the penthouse, she was climbing into his lap, her dress hiked up, his hands everywhere. Someone could see, she gasped as he kissed down her throat. Let them. Let everyone know you're mine. They barely made it inside before he had her against the wall, her legs around his waist, moving together with desperate urgency. 3 months of hatred turned to need, of fighting turned to underscore, of resistance turned to surrender. I love you, she gasped as she shattered around him. The word surprised them both. He stilled, pulling back to look at her. Say it again. I love you, Victor. My monster, my enemy, my husband. I love you, too, he said as dawn broke again. More than my empire, more than my life, more than my soul. Prove it. His smile was wicked. Every day for the rest of our lives. Any regrets? Victor asked as they stood on the balcony, souls spread before them. Just one. His body tensed. I should have slapped you harder that first time. Maybe we would have figured this out sooner. If you want to know how a stubborn woman brought Moscow's most dangerous mafia don to his knees, and why they can't decide if they want to kill each other or _ each other senseless, hit that subscribe button now. Because this story is about to get very filthy. Now, let's rewind 3 months before this day. The limousine smelled like leather and danger as Zara sat across from her father, watching Atlanta disappear through tinted windows. She'd been given exactly 12 hours' notice. Pack your things. You're getting married. The family needs this. He's powerful, her father has said, not meeting her eyes. The Petrov family controls most of East Asia's underground. This alliance will save us. You mean selling me will save you. Not like you mean selling me save you. She held up a manicured hand. Her voice deadly calm. Let's call this what it is. You _ up. Got in debt with the wrong people, and now you're trading your daughter like cattle. The wedding happened 2 days later in Moscow. No time to run. No time to plan an escape. 500 guests she didn't know watched her walk down an aisle in a dress she hadn't chosen toward a man she'd never met. Viktor Petrov looked like God's apology for creating the devil. He was a devastating beauty wrapped in a perfectly tailored suit with eyes that had seen too much death and hands that had caused most of it. He didn't smile when she reached him, didn't take her hand, just looked at her with those cold, dark eyes like he was calculating her worth. The kiss was perfunctory. His lips barely brushed hers before pulling away. At the reception, while everyone danced and pretended this wasn't a business transaction, he leaned close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive that made her stomach flip traitorously. Let me be clear about our arrangement, Mrs. Petrov, he said in perfect English, his accent barely noticeable. You'll live in my home. You'll attend events as required. You'll play the part of my wife in public. In private, you stay out of my way. I won't touch you. Won't warm my bed. Understood. The dismissal in his voice made her burn. Crystal clear. Though I should warn you, I don't follow orders. Well, something flickered in his expression. You'll follow mine. We'll see about that. The first week, she tested boundaries like a child finding the edges of a new prison. She wandered the penthouse at all hours, rearranged his perfectly organized study, played music too loud while he conducted business calls. Each small rebellion was met with a clenched jaw, a tightened fist, a look that promised consequences he never delivered. But it was the second week when she discovered his weakness. She'd been walking from the shower to her room, the guest room, because God forbid the great Victor share his space. When her towel slipped, not completely, just enough to reveal the curve of her breast, the length of her thigh. She could have fixed it immediately, but she didn't. Victor was coming out of his study, probably to tell her to turn down her music again when he froze. His eyes tracked the water droplets rolling down her dark skin, the way the terry cloth clung to her curves. His hands fisted at his side so hard his knuckles went white. Cover yourself, he ordered, his voice rough. It's my house, too, isn't it? She adjusted the towel slowly, deliberately, watching his jaw clench. Or are you going to give me a dress code now? Zara, what's wrong? Mafia husband. She stepped closer, close enough that he could probably see through the damp fabric. Afraid you might actually want your wife. His hands tangled in her hair, tilting her head to deepen the kiss. And she moaned into his mouth, finally, getting what she'd been chasing. But just as she reached for his belt, he pulled away. No, he panted. Not like this. I'm not in control. The rejection stung. She slapped him hard enough to split his lip. Coward. He caught her wrist, pulling her against him. Careful, wife. I'm trying to be honorable. I don't want you to be honorable. I want you to keep your promise. What promise? The one about _ me until I can't walk. Like this dark romance so far. Drop a comment telling me if Zara should keep pushing or if Victor should break, because someone's control is about to snap completely. 4 days after that rejection, Zara went nuclear. She brought men home, business associates, artists, anyone who would make Victor's eye twitch. She didn't let them pass the foyer. But he didn't know that. She laughed too loud, danced too close, and made sure he could see everything from his study. Then she stopped wearing underwear. It was a small rebellion, but effective. The silk pants, the sundresses, the thin fabrics. He noticed. Oh, he noticed. His eyes would track her movements, darkening when she bent over, when she stretched, when she sat with her legs crossed. One evening, She was cooking badly because she couldn't cook. But that wasn't the point. She was wearing one of his white shirts and nothing else, humming to herself when she felt him behind her. What are you doing? His voice was strained. Making dinner. You can't cook. I can learn. You're not wearing. He cut himself off, taking a shaky breath. She turned, spatula in hand, the shirt gaping open. Not wearing what? His eyes dropped to where the shirt ended mid-thigh, then snapped back up. This has to stop. What has to stop? He gestured between them. This game you're playing. I'm not playing anything. She turned back to the stove. I'm just living my life. If you have a problem with it. He spun her around, pressing her against the counter. You're trying to seduce me. Is it working? She whispered. You know it is. His hands gripped the counter on either side of her, knuckles white. Every underscore day walking around like you don't know what you do to me. Like you don't know I'm going insane. Then do something about it. I can't. Because I stopped jaw clenching. Because if I start, I'll never stop. I'll become the monster everyone thinks I am. Maybe I want the monster. He laughed dark and bitter. You don't know what you're asking for. For a moment, she thought he would. His hand rose to her throat, his thumb pressing against her pulse. His other hand gripped her hip, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. She could feel him hard against her stomach. Could see the lust in his eyes. Then his phone rang. Business. Always __ business. He stepped away, answering in rapid Korean, but his eyes never left hers. She could see the promise in them. Soon that night, she heard him stroking himself in his bathroom again, the shower running too long, her name on his lips, the sound of his fist hitting the tile. She pressed her thighs together, her own hand sliding between her legs, matching his rhythm through the wall. They were both losing this game. The breaking point came the next night. She'd gone to a gallery opening despite his explicit orders to stay home. There had been threats, he said. Danger, he said. She'd gone anyway, wearing the red dress that made him crazy, the one with the low back and high slit. When she came home, the penthouse was dark. She turned to find him stepping out of the shadows. And for the first time since their marriage, she felt afraid, not of violence, of the promise in his eyes. I told you not to go. You're not my father. I'm your husband. Same difference. He moved faster than she could track, backing her against the wall. Do you know what could have happened to you tonight? But it didn't. That was when she noticed the gun in his hand. He brandished it in her face. Do you know how many people I had to kill tonight to keep you safe? Why are you so __ stubborn? I should lock you up in this penthouse. She slapped him then hard. Enough to give him a split lip. The gun pressed against Zara's spine as Victor's body caged her against the wall. His breath hot against her neck. You never __ listen. Victor growled, his free hand tangling in her hair, pulling her head back to expose her throat. I told you not to leave. And I told you. She hissed, grinding back against him just to feel him harden, just to prove her point, that I'm not your prisoner. He spun her around, slamming her back against the wall, the gun now pressed under her chin. 3 months of marriage. 3 months of this violent dance where they circled each other like wounded predators, wanting to destroy each other, wanting to devour each other. Then do it. She opened her mouth and took his thumb in, sucking it. But make a choice, dear Mafia husband. Because I'm tired of this game. Why not? Because I had men following you. Because I've had men following you every day since our wedding. His hand slammed beside her head. Do you know what it cost me to keep them from reporting back every time you let another man touch you? Every time you smiled at someone who wasn't me. Why do you care? Why do I? He laughed, the sound unhinged. Are you really that blind? You said you didn't want me. I lied. The admission came out ragged. Okay, I lied. I've wanted you since the moment you walked down that aisle looking like every sin I've ever wanted to commit. I've wanted you every morning when you do your __ yoga in those tiny shorts. I've wanted you every night when I hear you touching yourself through the wall, moaning my name like you don't know I can hear you. Her breath caught. You could hear everything. His mouth was at her ear now. Every whimper, every gasp, every time you came thinking about me, just like you can hear me. Then why? Because I'm trying to protect you. The words exploded out of him. From this life, from my enemies, from me. Because if I claim you, really claim you, there's no going back. You become a target. You become mine forever. And I'm selfish enough that once I have you, I'll never let you go. What if I don't want to be let go? He pulled back to look at her, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. couldn't wait for him to make up his mind anymore. She went on her tiptoes and kissed him. He returned it without hesitation, their tongues tangling together. When they broke apart, she whispered against his lips, "I'm already a target. I'm already yours. The only question is whether you're brave enough to be mine." In reply, he carried her to his bedroom, laying her on black silk sheets like an offering. His hands shook as he undressed her, revealing her piece by piece, his mouth following the path of his fingers. "I'm going to ruin you so bad," he warned, his teeth grazing her inner thigh. "Promise." What happened next was 3 months of tension exploding into desperate need. He took her apart with his mouth, his fingers, making her come twice before finally pressing inside her. The stretch, the fullness, the way he groaned her name. It was everything and not enough. If you made it to the end, comment stubborn below and tell me, should I continue Zara and Victor's story? Because these two are far from done driving each other crazy. Don't forget to subscribe for more dark romances that'll leave you breathless and desperate for more. Until next time, lovers, stay stubborn, stay dangerous, and never ever listen to orders. I love you all so much. The weeks that followed their explosive night together were a revelation that threatened to unravel everything Victor had built. Zara moved into his bedroom permanently, her presence transforming the cold penthouse into something that almost resembled a home. She rearranged his furniture with the same stubborn determination she applied to everything else, and Victor found himself unable to object when she replaced his stark black sheets with deep emerald silk that made her skin glow like molten gold in the morning light. Their days fell into a routine that was both domestic and dangerous. Victor would conduct his business while Zara attended university classes, having insisted on finishing her degree despite his protests. She wanted to maintain some independence, some part of herself that belonged only to her, and though it drove him insane with worry, he understood the need. She was not the type of woman who could be kept like a beautiful bird in a cage, no matter how gilded. But it was the nights that nearly destroyed his self-control. Zara had developed the habit of walking around the penthouse in nothing but one of his shirts, the fabric barely covering her thighs. And Victor was constantly torn between the desire to ravish her against the nearest surface and the need to maintain some semblance of authority in his own home. She seemed to take perverse pleasure in testing his limits, bending over to retrieve something from a low shelf just as he walked past, or curling up beside him while he worked, her bare legs draped across his lap, as if she had every right to distract him from matters of life and death. The first real test of their new arrangement came when Victor's business partner, Dmitry Volkov, arrived from St. Petersburg for a crucial meeting about expanding their operations into the Baltic states. Volkov was old school, the type of man who believed women should be seen and not heard, preferably while serving vodka and looking decorative. Victor had planned to conduct the meeting at his office, but a security threat forced them to relocate to the penthouse at the last minute. Zara, who had been lounging in the living room in silk pajamas that left little to the imagination, was supposed to retreat to the bedroom when the men arrived. Instead, she remained exactly where she was, curled up on the leather sofa with a book, acting as if she hadn't heard Victor's pointed suggestion that she might be more comfortable elsewhere. When Dmitry and his men entered the penthouse, their eyes immediately fixed on Zara with the kind of predatory interest that made Victor's jaw clench so hard he thought his teeth might crack. Dmitry, a man with silver hair and the dead eyes of someone who had killed with his own hands, barely bothered to hide his displeasure. "Victor," he said in heavily accented English, glancing meaningfully at Zara, "perhaps we could have privacy for business discussion." Zara looked up from her book with the innocent expression she wore when she was planning something particularly troublesome. "Oh, don't mind me," she said sweetly. "I'm just reading. I hardly ever understand business talk anyway." The lie was delivered with such perfect sincerity that Victor almost believed it himself, despite knowing that Zara had graduated summa cum laude with a degree in international business and spoke 4 languages fluently. Victor found himself caught between 2 impossible choices. He could order Zara to leave, which would establish his authority but also suggest that he couldn't control his own wife, or he could allow her to stay and risk offending a man whose cooperation was worth millions of dollars and dozens of lives. But before he could make a decision, Zara solved the problem for him in the most infuriating way possible. She stood up, stretching languidly in a way that made her silk top ride up just enough to flash a strip of smooth brown skin, and announced that she was going to make coffee. "Would anyone like some?" she asked, as if she were hosting a garden party instead of a meeting between two of the most dangerous men in Eastern Europe. The kitchen was open to the living room, separated only by a marble counter, which meant that Zara remained visible throughout the meeting. She moved with deliberate grace, reaching for mugs on high shelves that required her to rise up on her toes, bending to retrieve cream from the refrigerator in ways that made every man in the room forget what they were discussing. Victor watched Dimitri's men track her movements with growing hunger, their attention divided between the business at hand and the beautiful woman who seemed oblivious to their stares. But Victor knew better. Zara was many things, but oblivious was not one of them. Every movement was calculated, every gesture designed to keep the men off balance, while she listened to every word of their conversation. She was gathering intelligence while playing the role of the decorative wife, and Victor realized with a mixture of admiration and terror that his wife was far more dangerous than anyone in the room suspected. The meeting progressed with agonizing slowness. Dimitri kept losing his train of thought whenever Zara bent over the coffee machine, and his men were so distracted they forgot to take notes on the crucial details of shipping routes and customs officials who needed to be bribed. Victor found himself in the surreal position of trying to conduct serious business, while simultaneously wanting to murder everyone in the room for looking at his wife with such obvious desire. When Zara finally served the coffee, she did so with the kind of gracious hospitality that would have made a finishing school proud. She remembered exactly how each man liked his drink, engaging them in small talk that was just flirtatious enough to be memorable without crossing any lines that would give Victor excuse to shoot them. She asked Dimitri about his daughter's wedding, complimented one of his men on his watch, and somehow managed to extract information about their security protocols while discussing the weather in St. Petersburg. It was masterfully done, and Victor realized that he was watching a predator at work. Zara might look like a university student in silk pajamas, but she was operating with the calculation of someone who understood exactly how power functioned and how to acquire it. She was not just his wife, she was potentially his equal, and the thought was both thrilling and terrifying. The meeting finally concluded with handshakes and promises of future cooperation, but Victor noticed that every man in the room made sure to take a final look at Zara before they left. Dimitri himself lingered by the door, his gaze lingering on the curve of her neck as she cleared away the coffee cups. "Very beautiful wife," he said to Victor in Russian, thinking that Zara wouldn't understand. "You are lucky, man. But be careful. Beautiful things attract attention, and attention can be dangerous in our business." Victor's response was delivered in the same language, his tone pleasant, but his words carrying the weight of absolute threat. "My wife is under my protection," he said quietly. "Anyone who forgets this will find themselves regretting the oversight." For a very short time, Dimitri laughed, but there was nervousness beneath the sound. He nodded once and left with his men, the door closing behind them with a soft click that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Victor turned to find Zara watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. She had understood every word of the conversation, he realized. Her Russian was apparently better than she had let on. "How much of what I just heard was genuine business discussion?" she asked quietly. "And how much was you marking your territory?" Victor crossed the room in 3 strides, backing her against the marble counter with his hands braced on either side of her body. "Both," he said honestly. "Does that bother you?" Zara tilted her head, considering the question with the same seriousness she brought to everything else. "Should it bother me that my husband just threatened to kill anyone who looks at me wrong?" she mused. "Or should I be flattered that he values me enough to start a war over it?" Victor's hands moved to her waist, pulling her against him with enough force that she could feel exactly how much her performance had affected him. "You were magnificent," he said against her throat. "Absolutely magnificent and completely terrifying. I watched you gather more intelligence in one morning than most of my people manage in weeks." Zara laughed, the sound rich with satisfaction. "I learned from the best," she said, running her hands up his chest to loop around his neck. "You forgot that I spent months studying you before I figured out how to break you. Now I'm just applying those same skills to everyone else." The admission should have worried him, but instead Victor found himself kissing her with desperate hunger, backing her against the counter until she was sitting on the marble surface with her legs wrapped around his waist. The coffee cups clattered to the floor, forgotten, as Victor lost himself in the taste of her mouth and the feel of her hands in his hair. This is what she had reduced him to, he realized. A man who would abandon important business calls to ____. His wife on the kitchen counter where anyone could see them through the floor-to-ceiling windows. But he found that he didn't care who might be watching. Let them see. Let them understand exactly who Zara belonged to and what he would do to protect her. Later, when they were both breathing hard and Zara was wearing nothing but his shirt again, she asked the question that had been haunting him since the meeting ended. "What happens now?" she said quietly. "Dmitri and his men saw what I can do. They'll either want to use me or eliminate me as a threat. There won't be a middle ground." Victor's hands tightened on her waist possessively. "Now you become exactly what you were born to be," he said. "My partner in everything. My equal. My queen. But first," he continued, his voice taking on the hard edge that meant business, "you're going to learn how to defend yourself properly. The kitchen knife tricks you used during our early days together were impressive, but they won't be enough if someone comes for you professionally." Zara raised an eyebrow. "Are you offering to teach me how to kill people, Mr. Petrov?" Victor's smile was all teeth and dark promise. "Mrs. Petrov," he corrected, "I'm offering to teach you how to kill people efficiently. There's a difference." The training began the next morning in the penthouse's private gymnasium, a space that Victor had equipped with every piece of equipment necessary to maintain peak physical condition in a profession where weakness meant death. Zara arrived wearing form-fitting athletic wear that made it nearly impossible for Victor to concentrate on the lessons he was supposed to be teaching. She moved with natural grace, her body already strong from years of dance and yoga, but Victor could see immediately that she had no training in actual combat. They started with hand-to-hand techniques, Victor demonstrating how to break a man's wrist with the proper leverage, how to use an attacker's momentum against them, how to kill someone quickly and quietly with nothing but bare hands. Zara proved to be an excellent student, absorbing each lesson with the same intense focus she brought to everything else. She asked intelligent questions about anatomy and leverage, practicing each move until it became muscle memory. But it was when they moved on to weapons training that Victor realized just how much natural talent his wife possessed. Zara handled firearms with the calm competence of someone born to it, her shots grouping tightly in the center of the target even on her first attempt. Her hands remained steady under pressure, her breathing controlled, her focus absolute. She was, Victor realized with growing excitement, a natural-born killer who had simply never had the opportunity to discover her talents. The weeks passed in a blur of training sessions and business meetings where Zara proved herself invaluable. She accompanied Victor to negotiations with the kind of confidence that suggested she had been born to the role, reading people's tells and weaknesses with uncanny accuracy. More than once, she whispered crucial insights in Victor's ear that gave him the upper hand in deals worth millions of dollars. But it was the attempt on their lives that truly tested everything they had built together. Victor should have seen it coming. Dmitri had been too cooperative after the morning meeting, too willing to accept terms that heavily favored Victor's organization. The attack came on a Tuesday evening as they were returning from dinner at Victor's favorite restaurant, a small place in the old part of Moscow where the owner had been bribed into discretion and the back exits were always kept clear. The first shots shattered the rear window of their armored sedan, safety glass exploding inward as their driver immediately went into evasive maneuvers. Victor pushed Zara down below the seat line, covering her body with his own as more gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Professional hit team, he realized. At least 6 shooters positioned to catch them in a crossfire with no clean escape routes. Their driver, a man named Alexei who had been with Victor's family for 15 years, took 3 bullets to the chest before losing control of the vehicle. The sedan careened into a concrete barrier, the impact throwing Victor and Zara forward despite their seat belts. Victor's vision blurred from hitting his head on the partition, blood running down his face from a scalp wound, but his training kept him moving even through the disorientation. Zara was already reaching for the Glock Victor kept in a hidden compartment, her movements smooth and efficient despite the chaos around them. The shooters were advancing on their position, confident that their targets were disabled, but they had underestimated exactly how dangerous their prey could be. Victor kicked out the windshield while Zara positioned herself to provide covering fire, her shots forcing the attackers to take cover behind abandoned vehicles. The firefight lasted less than 3 minutes, but it felt like hours. Victor moved with lethal precision, using the wreckage of their sedan as cover while he systematically eliminated threats. But it was Zara who truly shocked him. She fought with cold calculation, her training evident in every movement as she dropped 2 attackers with clean headshots while providing support for Victor's advance. When the shooting finally stopped, 6 men lay dead in the street, and Victor found himself looking at his wife with new respect. She stood among the bodies without a trace of fear or regret, the Glock still steady in her hands as she scanned for additional threats. There was blood on her white dress from a graze along her arm, but she seemed entirely unconcerned with the injury. "Are you hurt?" Victor asked, checking her over for serious wounds. Zara shook her head, finally lowering the weapon. "Just scratched," she said calmly. "But we need to leave. Police response time in this district is approximately 4 minutes, and we've been here for 2. Victor felt something shift inside his chest as he looked at the woman who had just helped him survive a professional assassination attempt. This was not the university student he had married. This was a warrior, a partner worthy of standing beside him in the empire he was building. They disappeared into the Moscow underground, using safe houses and secure transportation that Zara navigated with surprising familiarity. It turned out that she had been studying more than just Victor during their months of marriage. She had memorized his emergency protocols, identified his allies and enemies, and established her own network of contacts within his organization. She had been preparing for this moment, Victor realized. She had been getting ready to become exactly what she was now revealing herself to be. The retaliation against Dmitri was swift and absolute. Within 48 hours, every member of his organization who had participated in the attack was dead, their bodies found in locations across 3 countries as a message to anyone else who might consider moving against the Petrov family. But it was Zara who planned the final stroke, the move that would eliminate Dmitri himself and send a message that would echo through the criminal underworld for years to come. She appeared at Dmitri's private club in St. Petersburg wearing a black cocktail dress and a smile that promised paradise. Security cameras would later show her entering the building alone, moving through the crowds with the confidence of someone who belonged. She found Dmitri in his private booth, surrounded by bodyguards who should have been watching for threats instead of staring at the beautiful woman who had somehow gained access to their boss. Zara sat down beside Dmitri as if she had been invited, her hand resting casually on his thigh as she leaned close to whisper in his ear. The poison she had applied to her lipstick was tasteless and nearly instantaneous, absorbed through skin contact in doses too small to be detected until it was far too late. Dmitri would be dead within minutes, but first he would have time to understand exactly who had killed him and why. "You made a mistake," Zara said softly, her voice carrying clearly to the recording device hidden in her purse. "You forgot that when you threaten a Petrov, you threaten his family. And family," she continued, pressing a gentle kiss to his cheek that delivered the final dose of poison, "is sacred." Dmitri's eyes widened in understanding and then in fear, but by then his nervous system was already shutting down. He died still staring at Zara, his last sight being the satisfied smile of the woman who had orchestrated his destruction. The recording would be delivered to every major criminal organization in Eastern Europe within hours, along with a simple message. The Petrovs were united, they were deadly, and they were not to be underestimated. Anyone who forgot this lesson would face consequences that extended far beyond simple business retaliation. Victor was waiting for Zara when she returned to Moscow, his pride evident in every line of his body as she walked into their penthouse still wearing the black dress that had been Dmitri's shroud. "You are magnificent," he said, pulling her into his arms with reverent hands. "Absolutely magnificent." Zara smiled against his mouth as he kissed her, tasting victory and blood and the promise of everything they would build together. "This is just the beginning," she said when they broke apart. "We're going to rule this city, this country, this entire part of the world. And we're going to do it together." Victor's response was to carry her to their bedroom, where he spent the rest of the night showing her exactly how much her partnership meant to him. They moved together with desperate passion, two predators who had finally found their perfect match in each other. When dawn broke over Moscow, they stood on their balcony wrapped in silk sheets, looking out over the city that would soon belong to them completely. Victor's empire had gained its queen, and Zara had found her kingdom. They were dangerous together, unstoppable together, and absolutely devoted to each other in the way that only two people who had chosen darkness could be. The future stretched before them like a promise written in blood and sealed with fire. There would be more enemies to eliminate, more territories to conquer, more challenges to face together. But they would meet each one as partners, as equals, as the king and queen of an empire built on love and violence in equal measure. And if anyone was foolish enough to stand in their way, they would learn why the Petrov family had become legend in the shadows of Moscow. Because Victor and Zara were no longer just husband and wife. They were an army of two, and they were just getting started. Subscribe for more dark romance adventures that will leave you breathless. Like and comment if you want to see more of Victor and Zara's empire. Until next time, stay dangerous.